Big news from Columbus is the fact that the sales tax holiday has passed both the House and the Senate and is waiting for the governor to sign, and indications are that he will sign it. This legislation was introduced in a bipartisan fashion by Senator Bacon from the Columbus area on the Republican side, and this office on the Democratic side in the House. And essentially what it does, it offers the residents of Ohio a 3-day window in August where there will be no sales tax on school clothes, school supplies, and other things related to going back to school. And the notion of this, especially in our county, was that it would help our local brick and mortars compete with those stores from across the state line. Now, I know as well as you that on many occasions people will make a pilgrimage, if you will, to Erie or to Grove City, the outlets, because we do, in Pennsylvania, there's no sales tax on clothing. And the idea was to make this equitable with Pennsylvania and offer our residents that opportunity. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a 1-year trial period. We'll see how it works and then reassess it. But it's big news for our district, and I was a proud sponsor of that legislation in the House, testified before committee and twice on the floor of the House as to its importance for us being located this year. It will be August 7th, 8th, and 9th, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that there will be no sales tax on school-related items here in the state of Ohio. Secondly, the Senate passed and the House has agreed to passage of a bill that would create Maple Syrup Products Month. And the idea here is to promote the idea and the business of maple syrup production in Ohio. Ohio used to be #1 in terms of maple syrup production, and that goes back to the period right after the Civil War. Currently, we sit at #6. And there has been a great interest in this industry. Of course, it's indigenous to the Great Lakes area. We have a number of maple producers in the 99th District. And as a result, this legislation is designed to bring awareness so that we all understand how important maple syrup production is to the 99th District. Along with that, I am working with a number of my colleagues to research the possibility and implementation of a center in Geauga or Ashtabula County, much like the Grape Research Center, to do that sort of work with respect to maple syrup and maple syrup products. There are a number of facilities like that, especially in the New England area, doing great work in terms of enhancing the maple syrup production process, and I feel we can do the same thing here, again positioning Ohio as a leader in maple syrup production, which creates jobs and helps stimulate our economy. Moving forward, in the new General Assembly, the 131st, a number of initiatives that I will be working on. First is CAUV reform. That stands for Current Agricultural Use Value. Our farmers, many of them, are going to be hit with 300% tax increases in January. We've been working on this since the end of August. The task force, which is open to the public, will meet again on January 12th at 9 o'clock in the basement of the OSU Extension here in Jefferson off Wall Street. But we've been at it every other Monday trying to come up with solutions to this pressing problem. If anybody had a tax bill that increased 300%, you too would be looking for relief. And the idea here is, my challenge to the task force was that we just can't complain about this issue. We have to offer concrete solutions. And already, members of this force have met with the Ways and Means Committee, once by phone, once by person-to-person conference in Columbus. And we will continue to work on this issue, allowing the tax collection folks in the Ohio Department of Taxation to examine different options to make this a more equitable approach to taxing agricultural land. So it's critically important to the 99th District that we continue to lead this fight to reform CAUV values. The roots of the CAUV actually go back to the 1970s, when there was an explosion in residences being constructed in Ohio. And the feeling was that agricultural land should not be taxed at the same rate as residential, because there's a far greater risk in agriculture. Weather, crop production, market prices, fuel costs, our farmers really go through a lot of risk. So this formula is very complicated. It's been around for over 40 years, and there's not been much done to it in terms of tinkering with the formula as conditions have changed. For example, world markets now are much more prevalent and have a greater impact than they did back in the 1970s. In fact, Brazil is producing more soybeans now than the United States. It's just one example of how things have changed. My point is that this formula, complicated as it is, has typically worked for us, but there has been a perfect storm of recalculations within the formula that has resulted in this 300% tax increase. So even though it's worked, we have to go back, revisit it, see if it still meets our needs here in the 21st century. And that's exactly what we're doing moving forward. It's important to note that this formula is beyond human manipulation. And by that I mean it's not the Democrats or Republicans' fault or anybody in Columbus or Washington, D.C. The formula is the formula. And once it was set into motion, there's very little that anybody can do. So there's no blame, and there's a lot of things that can be done to address that issue. But I want to make it perfectly clear that, and that's why I use the term perfect storm, everything that could have gone wrong in terms of raising the rate did go wrong recently. And that's why some of our farmers are looking at a 300% increase. But another issue that I'll be working on is education funding reform as we move forward in the next General Assembly. It still is a problem. And with open enrollment, with the ability for parents to choose charter schools, for example, there's a great deal of concern that our public schools are not receiving the funding they need to keep a quality program in place.
You want to start that sentence? Hold on.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a need to keep quality programming in place, and that's not being met by current budgets. The other issue that's tucked away in this is the recent controversy over the 5x8 rule in the Ohio Department of Education. It has been practiced that per population that a certain amount of phys ed teachers, art teachers, nurses, for example, would be required. Well, the State Board of Education has voted recently by 14-5 vote to overturn that requirement to allow districts theoretically to have more flexibility in terms of who they hire. My concern with that is if budgets aren't addressed, those sorts of options will be the first things to be cut, especially if they're not tested. And so we have to look at the fact that special needs students cost more money, that students from socioeconomic backgrounds that are below middle class require more funding, that English as second language learners require more funding. Those components in the formula must be addressed going forward so that school districts receive additional funds to meet those additional needs. And I've met with a number of my colleagues, I've met with a number of lobbyists to reassemble, I should say, the Education Funding Caucus so that we can do some educating amongst new members, bring some older members on board who may not have been able to be part of this, so that as we craft a new budget, those needs are understood and they're met, and we can approach the Supreme Court mandates 4 times now that we have equitable and adequate funding in the state of Ohio. So that's another portion, because it impacts not only education but economic development. Businesses are looking for an educated workforce as one of their factors when relocating or staying put, and we must offer quality education, I feel, in our public schools to do just that, to create jobs in Northeast Ohio. So critically important that we get this right. There are many who view that 5x8 rule as an unfunded mandate. Well, if it is a mandate, then we ought to fund it, and that's where reform is needed in terms of education funding. And as such, if we want our students to have phys ed, and we do, we want our students to have art, we want our students to have elementary music, etc., nurses in the school, then the state has to come forward and fund it. It's that simple. We can't allow these districts, as strapped as they are, to be pushed to the wall to look for local property owners to make up the difference. If that's what we really want, and I think we do, then the state needs to step up to the plate and fund those specialties that are critically important in the school. There are two health issues that are very dear to my heart, and they're becoming bubbling up as a major concern. First is Lyme disease. And keep in mind this is caused by bites from the deer tick. And our corner of the state, Ashtabula County, typically has led the state in terms of tick bites reported by our veterinarians, as they are required to do to the State Veterinarian Board. Well, if dogs are part of our life, and they are here in Ashtabula County, then I have a hunch that we have a number of people who are impacted by Lyme, and I know we do. There have been a number of reported cases, and there are a number of our Lymies, as they are called, who are impacted. The problem is the test for Lyme disease is inconclusive. It can come back false positive, false negative, and there are some within the medical world who deny the existence of Lyme disease in Northeast Ohio. In the last budget, with the help of Representative Rule from Mount Vernon area, we were able to appropriate $650,000 to reopen the tick testing center in Ohio State. It also tests for mosquitoes for West Nile virus. That looks to be part of the budget moving forward. But in addition to that, I fought for Lyme disease awareness within our agricultural community, within our hunting community, anybody who's in the outdoors. We absolutely must know that this is a problem that we have to manage. It's not going away. And so we, in this area of the state, have to be on the lookout for those ticks, and we get them tested and seek treatment if necessary. Now, that tick testing center is critically important, because ultimately what I'd like to do is be able to have, through our portable phones, a tracking device where we can, if we discover a tick, we can locate that particular position, send the tick away. If it comes back positive for Lyme, that we coordinate that on a scatter plot map so that we can discover where the hot zones are in this county and across the state, township by township, because these ticks are absolutely random. There may be ticks with Lyme a mile down the road. There may be ticks without Lyme. In another area, there may be no ticks at all. And it's interspersed. There's no rhyme or reason to this. We just must be aware that there are ticks out in the field, out in the forest, and our behavior simply has to change. We must be proactive, but to do that, we also have to promote education first, so we know everybody what we're getting into. The other health issue that is readily apparent in Ashtabula County is ALS, better known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And I've been working with those who are doing research in the county. Again, this is a very difficult issue. We need additional research to figure out where it is and what's happened and how to proceed from here. From what I've been told, and I'm still gathering information on ALS, it should occur in 1 out of every 100,000 individuals. Well, we know Ashtabula County is composed of about 100,000 people, but we know that there is more than one case in Ashtabula County, and has been. There are clusters in Conneaut, there are clusters in Geneva, there are clusters in Jefferson. A personal friend of mine, whose sons I had in class, died of ALS for the last couple of years, and then a friend of our family, a number of years ago, died of ALS. I mean, there's something here, something going on. Could be related to all the defense industry that was here during and after World War II, we don't know. But there's something not quite right. And working to discover where those pockets are, how they came to be, and what we need to do as we move forward. So it's very much in the early stages of research, and we want to make sure we have everything covered as we do, but it is an issue that I'm very much aware of. Another issue as we move forward in the new year is the rumored closing of Happy Hearts. Through our office, we were able to convince Director Martin to come up to the facility at Happy Hearts, and he did, not only providing a presentation, but taking a tour of the facility. The problem is, federal guidelines have changed, and the federal government wants us to be more inclusive in terms of those young people with special needs, as much as possible infusing them into the workforce. Now, as we well know, Happy Hearts, Ashcraft is a unique situation, and I would encourage any person who has never taken a tour of either facility to do so. They do marvelous work out there, and we have to fight to keep that open. It's important for our young people, it's important for our parents, it's important for this community. So the question is, how do we balance our needs to keep the facility open with the federal government mandate that we have to be more inclusive? Those are questions that are being addressed at the state level with the consultation of our local Happy Hearts Board. I suggested that we begin to examine the possibility of bringing business or industry to the campus. Director Martin was intrigued by this concept, actually calls it reverse integration. If there is a business looking to, and that could include those sorts of people who possess special needs, I would encourage you to contact Happy Hearts. It would be good for the community at large. It would be good for those people at Happy Hearts, the staff, the students, and Ashcraft. My feeling is that we have to be proactive in this approach. I don't want to wait for the feds to come in and tell us what to do, but if we can solve this on our own, we'd be much better off. I'm committed to fighting for our people who are at Ashcraft, and then staff and students, workers, and Happy Hearts, and feel that it's the right thing to do for everybody involved. The Route 20 bridge in Kingsville, between Kingsville and Amboy, is scheduled for replacement. Now, we must understand that bridge is going to be celebrating, and I use that term loosely, its 75th anniversary this summer. And it was built prior to our involvement in World War II. It goes back that far. Typically, bridges have a lifespan of 50 years, and we've got more life in it than what was planned for. I know it's going to be an inconvenience. I'm very much aware of the businesses on both sides of the bridge and the people who are going to be inconvenienced. But at this point, I would rather get that project here and get it over with as opposed to delaying any longer, because if it were to close tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to control, because it takes a while to get contracts let out, we wouldn't be able to control the time frame for it to get fixed. So again, it's better to be proactive, and we've looked at various solutions. Given the design of the bridge, given the right-of-ways, given the fact that we're working with the railroad, it's very, very difficult to come up to a solution to keeping even a crossing open that's really close to the bridge. And I know there's a side road up there, but dealing with the railroads is problematic in and of itself. So we're going to have to work together on this one. We're going to have to find creative ways to celebrate the bridge demolition and get people out there to watch. We'll have to take this lemon and turn it into lemonade as best we can moving forward. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the constituents of the 99th District for entrusting me with another 2 years of leadership. I'm grateful for that. I'm ever mindful of the special gift that I have. But I want you to know too that I work diligently every day to promote the 99th with your best interests at heart. And during this holiday season, let us all reflect upon the family, friends, a district, a state that is poised, I believe, for greatness. I feel from the bottom of my heart that our best days lay ahead of us. And working together in the spirit of cooperation, we can bring that dream to the table and make it a reality. God bless you, citizens of the 99th District.